Thank you very much. I am OKUBO. We just heard from Professor Baldwin about the great trade hack, and I was requested to give you a comment. I'd like to speak for about 10 minutes. This book is coming out with a very timely topic, and it has a bold analysis. It is a very good book, especially how we should we consider this from the Japanese perspective. I think it's very meaningful, especially the current situation, or what should be the Japan's position on globalization. Considering this is a very significant, important book to be. In the discussion part, I would like to consider this and talk about the perspectives from Japan. How should we react to this book? The perspectives of Japan, also the Japanese position on globalization. I will talk on 3 topics. The first topic being that how should Japan react to this great trade hack? And that's the point. And on top of this, concerning Japan's globalization, what should be our position or the stance? We need to better understand what it should be. The second point I'd like to talk about is how individuals consider trade globalization, and those ideas become more important than ever. I'd like to share with you some of the recent data that I have gathered. The grievance is the second point, and in case of Japan, what are the grievances we are seeing, or in the future, would there be anti-globalism in Japan? The third point is the leadership herds. How should Japan be included in the herds of leadership, and what will be the difficulties? Those are the points that I like to talk about. Now, first, about the globalization of Japan. It is going to be very different from other countries, and Japan is a very unique country. We need to be aware of this. One point is that the trade liberalization is very well progressed. It's deep trade liberalization we hear. However, on the other hand, we do not have sentiments for immigration. Therefore, the concept of globalization in Japan is very different from that of other countries.
As a result, as you can see, individual preferences about trade liberalization, we have very positive sentiment. And about immigration, there are a lot of people who have negative attitude toward this immigration policy. And this is the stance that we have to keep in mind as we try to design what we can do to react. So I'd like to show you some data that I have privately collected on Japan. This is a survey we jointly conducted with NIRA Research Institute, targeting 10,000 Japanese workers. This is a panel survey. And recently we have had a survey from December last year up to January this year. And we are going to use 12th wave for the survey. First of all, I'd like to explain the basic approach to free trade. 27% of the respondents said that they would agree with the free trade. And who will be promoting protectionism? That's 7%. So as you can see, more number of people agree with free trade, and 9%, 18%. So combined together, they have positive attitude to free trade. The blue part is the disagreement with free trade. And depending on the age group, the difference is obvious. Older people tend to better agree with free trade. About 65%, the 40% of the respondents actually do have positive attitude to free trade. And high wealth population tend to agree with free trade as well. Now, questions are also asked on immigration. Many people do have negative attitude. 27 would disagree with immigration policy, as opposed to 15% who agree. So this is the flip side of the trade result. So the blue part, light blue included, together 27%. They are disagreeing with immigration policy as opposed to 15% agreeing. So as I said earlier, on liberalization, majority of citizens have positive sentiment. Now, if you ask policy-related questions, the differences are not as obvious. For example, on tariffs, we ask question whether the tariffs should increase or not to protect domestic industries. 20% said that we should increase tariffs, and 21% think that tariffs should be decreased to protect consumers. So the similar graphs are indicated on top. We have the total, and we have the gender, and we also have different age groups as well as income groups. As you can see, the blue, light blue, are the ones who believe that they should raise tariffs, 21%, and 21%, the orange part, believe that the tariffs should be reduced. And middle-income earners do not show obvious differences. There are not many people who believe that they have to drastically improve tariffs. Likewise, we ask questions on foreign immigrant workers. In order to protect jobs in Japan, should we decrease the number of immigrants? That's the blue part. And red believe that they should increase the number of foreign workers because we have labor shortages in Japan. So with that, if you look at the total result, 23% believe that the foreign workers should decrease, 26% believe the number of foreign workers should be increased. So similar numbers are there. And more aged people believe that they should increase the number of foreign immigrant workers. And foreign companies' acquisition of Japanese companies is also asked about this topic. And the red part indicate that they have positive sentiment, blue, negative, white is neutral attitude. So about 50% of people do not believe foreign companies' acquisition of Japanese companies is not good, and 7% believe it's a positive thing. What is obvious is if the age is more advanced, they tend to have a negative attitude toward foreign.
Foreigners purchasing the real estate, should there be regulation, the red more and the white neutral, the blue say the current system suffice, then 44% of the people in general have negative view. In other words, there should be regulation. 13% think it can remain as it is. And there are differences by age. The higher age group, the older people become, they're more negative and believe there should be more regulation. Above 65%. The 63% of the people believe that there should be regulation on foreigners making purchase of Japan real estate. So, concerning liberalization, the Japanese people have positive view. However, when it comes to immigration or foreigners purchasing Japan asset, they're more negative. Considering this, one thing we can say is that, then getting back to Trump's tariff, if Japan should Japan introduce retaliatory tariff or more tariffs attached to foreign imports? It's not likely. However, if the United States or any other foreign countries are willing to purchase the by Japan companies or pushing Japan to accept immigrants, Japan will respond negatively, and there will be much confusion in the society. Why is this the case? That is because Japanese have long been benefited from trade liberalization. For many years, it had been the forerunner of liberalizing trade. Therefore, the Japanese are well aware of the benefits, and that's, I believe, is the result of this survey. Another aspect is more psychological or non-cognitive factors that seem to play important roles. For example, endowment effects, status quo bias, may have interplayed here, leading to this outcome. The second point is the grievance. Where do the grievance come from in Japan? It's not really in the middle class, because middle class people usually do not raise their voices. That's 50% of the population. However, Japan is a very homogeneous society. And there are three S's: social norm, there are many unwritten rules without any laws and regulations. Social identity is very strong. Being Japanese, university alumni is another group, or you've graduated from here and there. The social identity is very strong, and social capital is strong as well. For example, the bonding in the society is very strong. They help each other, or they have strong trust in the government. It's homogeneous, both good and bad. Now, there's a strong impact or influence of SNS. People like to cherry-pick information, or they react more emotionally rather than theoretical information. And when these two are added, this anti-globalization sentiment is more likely to be generated. So when the foreigners engage in some wrong behaviors, and if that goes against social norm, people write this in social media, and that leads to social penalties. Then anti-globalization sentiments on foreign immigrants or foreigners may likely to become much stronger. This is another OKUBO NIRA data. What are the sources of information? There are large differences by age. For example, if it's social media, to the further right, 80% of the people in their teens and 20s use social media occasionally or often. But 65 and older, it's very rare. If you go to TV and radio, the middle-aged to older people receive information from TV and radio. Therefore, the source of information varies a lot by age. Now, this is just a possibility, but in Japan, where the social norm, identity, and capital is very strong, and in addition, there's use of social media, where younger generations like to follow myths and stories. Even when there's no specific theory or data, they only tend to enjoy what they like to hear. What will eventually happen is to support Trump-like ways of thinking and behaviors that will become stronger.
And eventually, this may lead to anti-globalization. And this is quite likely in Japan. It's not just the middle class, but SNS may have a major impact on how we are going to act. So lastly, I want to talk about how Japan could join leadership herd. S2 is a result of the survey we conducted with NIRA. How much do we favor Trump's policy or not? And 40% of the people said that they are negative toward Trump's threat. And there's also another statement we asked about whether they feel friendly to Trump or not. 17% actually said they had positive feelings toward Trump, possibly due to SNS impact. But if the age goes up, they do see Trump as a threat, over 60% that is. And in the younger generation, this ratio is only 20%. And we asked the question on China, what is their impression about China? 63 said they have negative impression, as opposed to 6% who have positive impression about China. And for Russia, 62% have strong negative feelings. And as you can see, without US, if we are going to join the leadership heard, they do actually have strong worries about China and Russia. They have negative sentiments toward China and Russia. So this may be representing a difficulty for Japan to join the leadership herd. It's a very difficult decision to make. So going forward, we, academia, need to play a central role in formulating strategy and analysis. We have to come up with new ideas with regard to how to cope. So there are multiple programs provided by RIETI. I'd like to invite researchers to join us to present various ideas. And that concludes my comment. Thank you very much.
Professor OKUBO, due to my mismanagement of time allocation, so we don't have time to discuss his comment. And I'm allowed to take only one question from the audience. That's about China. That's related with the last part of Professor Okubo's comment. And the question is that can we or should we tolerate the expanding export from China? You know that Professor Baldwin emphasized now we are in the conflict between the US and the rest of the world, including China. Could you give us your views on China?
Sure. Thank you very much for that. So let me make two quick points. One of my colleagues, Simon Evident, has studied how the quantitative possibility of trade diversion. And he's found that there's only about 100 products that China exports to the US that could lead to serious disruptions in other markets. So the Chinese exports to the US are fairly limited. That's the first point. So it's not as big of a threat as one might think without looking at the numbers. The second is China will be dumping those goods. So the dumping is defined on the free on board. In other words, before the tariffs. And so if China is absorbing some of those tariffs, they are, by definition, dumping everywhere else. So countries like Japan can use anti-dumping duties to counter those. And that stays perfectly consistent with the WTO. So I expect Japan and EU and many other countries to put up more anti-dumping duties. But as long as they follow the rules, they're disciplined, it's also very clear why Japan is putting up tariffs against China. It's not because of some grievance, it's because they're dumping. And that kind of discipline and guardrails will prevent it from spinning out of control. So I do fully expect Japan will put more anti-dumping duties on Chinese goods, but as long as it follows the WTO rules, that's not the end of the world.
Okay, thank you very much. Now it's time to close the webinar. Thank you very much, Professor Baldwin and Professor Toshihiro OKUBO. Thank you again very much for your participation in our BBL webinar today. Thank you.